The office environments are changing. The workplace is changing, and the way we work is changing as well. Got multiple generations in the same working in the same offices, open floor plans. You got people who work from home and come into the office a few times a week, and they may travel for work and things like that. We have work teams, and then conference rooms are in high demand as well. The reservations tool in Archibus Cloud is designed to help you kind of maximize your current space use, ensure you have a right mix of that inventory. Make sure you have conference rooms available when people need them. Make sure you have landing areas where groups can get together and collaborate and things like that. If you have the tools in place to help you understand how your employees are working, you can better utilize the space you have. As you'll see in the demonstration, this is going to be an easy way for end users to book a space, whether it be a conference room or a landing space or a cubicle as they're traveling. You can manage your existing space. And again, as we talked about, you're going to improve your utilization and identify as your business changes, your needs are going to change for your space. And so you can understand a little bit about how your employees are using the space they have. If you don't have enough conference rooms, you'll figure out, you'll see that, and then you can adjust your space accordingly. And that helps you able to plan your future space needs, and also just helps you kind of foster a better work environment and have better, happier. And so, Greg, I'm going to pass it off to you now. Arquebus Reservations, right?
Yes, sir. So yes, I mean Arquebus Reservations is one of the aspects of the Arquebus suite for cloud, and it is geared to really help you get a better handle on the use of conference rooms and meeting spaces and huddle spaces and phone booths and things like that. So the work environment has certainly evolved over the past decade or two, and it is a much more agile place to be. And Arquebus is doing what it can to help you better manage and understand that, and A, give you the tools to do the work to manage, and B, help you measure and monitor the success and use of those spaces. Like most programs, we have a fully functional calendar that really helps you view the status of any and all rooms within the portfolio of reservable spaces. And that's the beauty of Arquebus, is that you already have the spatial inventory that links you directly to the space database. And what we add is that ability to schedule rooms and monitor that schedule on a day-by-day, week-by-week, month-by-month basis, so that you can book and organize any meetings for the right size of people within the organization. I think what's evolved recently is that the work environment and the people working in the space want to interact more directly with it. And so in order to do that, we need to give them tools that enable them to leverage the technology that they carry with them every day, the mobile phone, the tablet, or their laptop, or whatever device that they're using, so that they have their own screen where they can request meeting space, book a working space, create a ticket for work. And when they're creating that meeting space reservation, they have the access to the right type of information to find the space that would be available for them to use. And the same goes for booking a working space. So in this case, maybe I'm looking for a phone booth, and it tells me based on the date that I'm selecting what rooms could be available, and from that I would select what I'm going to use. On the back end of this, it's our job to help measure and monitor what is going on with that space and make sure that we're getting full utilization of the space. So we can see the volume of reservations that we have. We can see the amount of time that we're using within the system. So it helps us to fully leverage and make sure that we have the right mix of meeting spaces within our portfolio, where we have the right number of touchdown spaces for people to work when they show up and need a place to work. And we can see over time how effective we are in making that tool available, and the ability for employees to reserve space, easily. And what's nice is that, we use this system to make sure that we can review any of the conference room meetings or any of the work desk bookings on a, time range that could be by the day, by the week, by the month, whatever the case may be. And what Arquebus wants to do is help you establish parameters for making reservations so that you're using the right rooms for the right purposes. You don't want to use a large-scale auditorium or a big conference room for somebody who's going to have a meeting with 3 people. So you can use the system to help control what meeting rooms would be made available to the people. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a little bit of time and kind of get a quick tour of some of the features and capabilities and show some of the interactions of the software and share some of the results that you have. First thing I'm going to do is I decided to approach this a little bit differently, and I actually recorded using a tablet as a means of interacting, because we expect that will be one of the key ways that employees want to do things. And so I'm just going to run this little sequence here that allows me to show you what's going to happen. And here I am in my tablet, and again, it's finger touch ready so that I can get to what I want to do. And I'm going to select a time that I need the meeting space for on a selected date. So right now I need a meeting from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. as far as the meeting goes. And again, I've made that decision. I've set the date to the 13th, and I've said I need a space that can accommodate 30 people. You can see as I was doing this, the room started filtering out a bunch of places, rooms that would be too small. So I picked one of the places that are large enough based on what I'm looking for. In this case, I need a theater set up for us to do. So it confirms the date, the time that I want to do. My job here, of course, is to set up the meeting, make sure I've identified what is the name of the meeting. And this is going to be an Arquebus Reservations, demonstration or presentation or whatever the case may be. And we're going to link it back to the appropriate department that's going to be responsible for coordinating. And we have successfully booked the meeting. And the employee is always going to have access to all of the meetings that they are responsible for. And as you can see, on the 13th, we have that as part of the list of reservations that we have scheduled and arranged for the employees. So again, the employee interaction is to allow them to use the devices they're used to that are easy to deploy, that use the adaptive, responsive design kind of mindset so that they can deal with it. And I'm going to show you how that matters in the next sequence here, because what I'm going to do is now, instead of using my tablet, I'm going to use my phone. I have a Galaxy Note 10 that I'm working with. So you can see already the screen has adapted to the form of the device that I'm working with. So let's go ahead and get us started here. So I want to book a workspace in this particular case. So you can see that I have the ability to add a workspace, and I hit the plus sign. I then go to the second floor of the building, and I start narrowing down when I need the space. So I'm going to pick the 12th of February, and I just need it for the morning. And the type of space I need is actually a phone booth, because as you can tell, I have a pretty booming voice, and I want to make sure I'm not disturbing anybody else in my proximity. So I finger, pinch, zoom, find the room that I want to work in. It's available. I click it. I'm booking it for myself. I can certainly book it for somebody else. And now that we have set that up, I am good to go, and I have booked it. And I go back there, and then I just click on the list of workspaces, and this just shows me all of the different reservations that I've set up for booking rooms and the different dates and times that I have. So again, this is just confirmation of the booking that we did for the 12th in the morning on the system. So again, I use my phone. The phone used the responsive design nature of the software so that it made it easy for me to manipulate on the computer. Now, all of that, of course, is tied to the full-blown application, and we have a fairly functional reservations calendar that we work with. So let's go ahead and get that started. And the calendar is pretty straightforward. It gives us access to all of the rooms in the facility that we have. So we're going to actually look at all the rooms that are located on the first floor of the TGD Technology Center. And there's a pretty extensive list. I'm going to actually look for the largest rooms first. And just by way of example, I'm going to pick the classroom, number 118. And if you look very carefully, you can see the capacity is from 10 to 50 people. And I'm going to look at what the schedule is on the 10th to the 16th. So we can already see a bunch of meetings. And right here in the calendar, if I'm administering the system, I can actually set up a new reservations. So using this tool as somebody who is responsible for multiple entries, I can use the Archibus calendar. And I'm going to create an Arquebus workshop. And I'm going to charge it back to the Executive Division Management Department. So again, the easy access touch typing that would take place. I can add people that I want to invite, but we're just going to do a simple confirm the reservation for the time being. This now adds the reservation to the calendar, and the first thing it's do is going to give me a list of all the reservations that I've made. So this is just a checklist to verify all the rooms that I've done, and this reservation appears at the top of the list. And I think we're good to go. So now what we're going to do is switch over to look at some of the reporting capability in the software. And what I did is I organized a bunch of reports. And so again, let's go ahead and get started. And I want to understand how effective I am in using the system. So I just pulled a bunch of reports that I have, and I made them easily accessible for me rather than going into the individual, reports that are there. And so for starters, I just want to get a comprehensive list of all reservations that are scheduled for the month of February. And as you can see, we have a lot of Arquebus-related activity going on here. All of those favorites I can, easily attach to my main menu, so have easy access to the information. And the next thing I want to do is look at the, count of reservations per day. So I want a big glimpse of summarizing how things look for the month of February yet again. So what do we've got planned and what have we executed? So again, I pick my date range, I click show, and this shows me what activity I have on a day-by-day basis, and I can take a look at and see what reservations are scheduled on any given day within the month within the system. So the next thing I want to do is look at how effective I'm using the time from the meeting spaces that I have. So again, using the month of February as our baseline here, let's go ahead and pick show. Now what we're going to do is see how many hours of time we're using on a day-by-day basis. And if we look at the 11th, we can see that we've booked like 8 meetings or 9 meetings, but we've booked 13 hours of time of the conference room schedules that we have. So we still have available capacity to book more functions at that point in time. If we take a broader view of how we've been doing over the past few months or the past year, or whatever the case may be, the difference here is now I'm going to take a bigger look over a year, let's say back to last February into this February, and I want to see how we've been doing in terms of tracking our bookings. And you can see starting in October, we started tracking more things, although it looks like January was a pretty light month. And we can see, very quickly that we are getting more utilization of the system and better accommodation for employees to leverage the capabilities that we have within the software and giving them that direct access. So again, using the same, function, we'll just take a peek for the past 12, 13 months, and we can see how many hours of time we've scheduled. And you can say, well, why is it so low if we have so many reservations? This goes to making sure that people who create the information are inputting all of the right data. So people were reserving rooms, they were finding the right size of the room, but they weren't telling us at the end of the day how many people actually were going to be in the room. And that's why we only had 3, location or 3 people, measured, where a lot of other meetings were not properly counted within the system. And these are things that we need to know. We have that same kind of data for all the different workstations and phone booths and things, where we can look at, what level of activity we have within our booking stations. We can track what employees are most taking advantage of this. So, from our presentations, we use a lot of the AFM-EM employee who makes the bookings, and we can see the history of all the reservations that were made on every day, whether full day or half day. And we can also use the system to identify what rooms are typically being used. And again, we'll look at the month of February here. And we have our building on the 3rd floor. We're just going to look at any and all of the rooms that were being used at this point in time. So again, we can get a good sense of people, showing up and telling us where they are actually using the accommodation that we provide for them. So you can see Arquebus not only helps the employees find the space that they're looking for, but it helps you make sure that you understand how the employees are using the spaces, how they're making reservations, so that you can make sure you have the right amount of space in the system. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about was, of course, the idea of what does it take to set this up? Well, the most important aspect of this is to make sure that when we get into the system, we can define those types of rooms that we want to set up. So we have already gone into the building. We've designated all the proper rooms for reservation. I'm going to use one of the rooms that we already touched on, room 118 on the 1st floor. We've set it up as a typical classroom. And in that classroom, we have said, look, I can make it a classroom. I can also turn it into a theater. I could turn it into a conference room. I have many options. For this one, we're going to do one function. We're going to charge the people using it by the reservation. We could charge them by the hour, by the day, whatever the case may be. How much are we going to charge them if they choose not to go? Verify that the space is reservable. If there's multiple setups, which is the one that is typically defaulted? Does it require anybody's approval to use the space? Are certain spaces restricted from visitors? This is an important aspect that I just kind of glossed over really quick, is the capacity and minimum requirement. So if you have a large scale room that can hold, let's say, up to 50 people, you want to also put them a minimum threshold on the space. Make sure that somebody with 2 or 3 people isn't reserving that room and finds a space more appropriate. So that's another thing that we can do to make sure that you're right-sizing the portfolio and getting the right meeting spaces. As we continue down the process here, we can certainly set up, if there's any setup and teardown time, so that, for instance, if my typical arrangement is classroom and I convert it into a theater, I got to get all the tables out of there. So setting up the room is removing the tables, and then at the end I want to put it back to classroom, for instance. I have to move all the tables in. So I can add 10 minutes on the front end, on the back end, or 20 minutes, or whatever the case may be, where that room would not be available if I have to switch styles. The other thing that we do is say what part of the day is the space available for reservations and how far in advance we want to book the space that we're looking at. And as you can see, there are some rules around cancellation, but these are some of the main criteria that help us guide the users to finding the right space to make the selection that they have. So as you can see, Arquebus Reservations ties very nicely into the software, and it gives you the ability to leverage that inventory and interact with the employees, make sure that they have the ability to share space. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff and Lisa, and we'll talk about what's coming up next and answer questions.
Okay. Well, our next session will be covering the SaraView space planning and optimization tools for Archibus Cloud, and that will be on March 12th. You can get to any of the recordings on the Imagine It Resource Center. We'll have a link to those in the email when we send that out along with the recording. But you can also go to this bit.ly site here, bit.ly/archibuscloud to register, or go to the Imagine It website. And we do have some questions here, so if you've got a moment, Greg. The first one that we have is, Is this system integrated with our organization's mail or calendar system so that it could show up in, for instance, an Outlook calendar?
Yes, absolutely. That's part of the setup. If you tell us you're using Outlook, fine. If you're using Google Calendar, fine as well.
So a user essentially might get on their iPhone or whatever, get into their Outlook mail, and then they could just schedule that like they would normally schedule a room in Outlook?
Absolutely, correct, yes.
Okay, that's great. It looks pretty easy and straightforward, so.
Well, thank you. Yes, I do think that, we are really gearing towards connecting the employees with the facilities group and leveraging all this data that, everybody's responsible for tracking so that it can be used in many different ways and help the employees, do the work that they have to do without having to make a dozen phone calls or send a bazillion emails or book a room in Outlook and then find out somebody didn't, inform that somebody else was using it. So yeah, this is going to be pretty powerful stuff.
I especially like the feature that you can book on someone else's behalf. That would have come in handy the other day to know. We do have another question. Any potential integration with occupancy sensors?
Yes, absolutely. There are a variety of sensors that you can integrate with. Some of them are based on infrared, where we just kind of detect bodies. Some, of course, are based on motion, so that it kind of tracks how many bodies based on motion. And some are based on optical, which are basically now getting to the point where they can recognize human shapes and count the number of those shapes in the system. So yes, you have a variety of choices that you can use to put sensors in some of these meeting rooms or at these work desks to verify that they're in use.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Can you, in the meantime, Greg, can you tell us a little bit more about the upcoming SareView Space Planning and Optimization, what exactly that might cover?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're working on, obviously, is we have a lot of people who use Arquebus to manage their CAD floor plans. But there's, if you look at Arquebus and SareView, it's basically one company, but we manage kind of two products. Arquebus, everybody knows from an IWMS point of view. It gives you ability to manage space, assets, leases, operations, etc. SareView, on the other hand, is very specialized around workplace optimization and employee, enablement type things. So it really helps you get in and understand how to take advantage of managing the workplace, especially in these agile work environments. So by using SareView in conjunction with Arquebus, you'll be able to take advantage of some of the planning tools, scenario tools that they have, utilization measurement tools to help you see where you are being efficient, where you have inefficiencies, and help you realign your portfolio to match the current needs. If you go to most buildings nowadays, the idea that everybody gets an office and comes in, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day is kind of gone by the wayside. And SareView will be there to help you say, look, this is the expected use of the space at any point in time during the week, so therefore this is the amount of space that you would need to accommodate the employees in the way that they're working. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting development for us to be able to work so closely with the SareView platform and still leverage the broader capabilities of Arquebus, dealing with work orders, asset inventory, leases, projects, etc.
Oh, that sounds great. Sounds like it'll be exciting. That concludes today's webinar. Thank you very much for attending today.